Welcome on into the Fantasy Football Forge. My name is Steve, and today we will be looking at drafting from an early position in the draft. For a 12-team league, talking about picks 1 through 4. For a 10-team league, we're talking about picks 1 through 3. We'll be looking at, of course, a little bit of 12-team, more 12-team, a little bit of 10-team. Check out if you end up wanting to jump ahead to that 10-team stuff. There should be descriptors, chapter markers to help you out with that. We'll be thinking about things about a 2 wide receiver versus a 3 wide receiver league along the way. Just generally giving some of my thoughts. You're looking at a lot of different drafts that I'm going to do. I'm going to do drafts looking at the zigging while the rest of the league zags or typically from these positions, kind of doing the opposite of what's expected, or the less common route. And then looking at going with the flow. Real quick here, want to let you know, if you are interested in helping out the channel in the best way possible by becoming a member, that's obviously appreciated. Also, liking, subscribing, commenting, all that really, really helps as well and helps the channel. But if you do want to become a member, what are the benefits to that? Check out in my player highlights series, the 2 videos where I go about it for the final few minutes of each of those videos are the James Cook and the David Njoku videos. So check those out. That'll give you a little bit of a description of what there is to offer. It's 99 cents. I just want to have something to offer for you. So there's some good little tools there. Also, if you're not familiar, if you're newer, I'm going live every Thursday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So come on and join us. We've been drafting, not gambling. We've just been doing it from the Sleeper app. So nice, easy to access, no credit card needed or anything like that. And you can get some practice in. Speaking of practice, most people do their drafts over Memorial Day weekend. Is it Memorial Labor? Throughout that week leading up to that weekend, I will be doing mock drafts a lot that week. So stay tuned. Come join up for that. We're not going to stick on these charts too much. We'll get to the fun stuff, the drafts, and looking at those pretty quickly. But I do want to say some things that I observed while looking at both of these. We'll start off with the running back, the hot spots that I found from the running back, rounds 3, 4, 6, which I think is more so here. Yep, via rank 6. 8, 11, 14, and 15 were the hot spots. So I was probably looking more so at the ranking on that one. But those are the areas of the draft where if you're drafting from this point of the draft, maybe you could plan on getting several of your running backs around those areas of the draft. Or at least that's what typically, I guess, people are doing, is getting a lot of their running backs in those rounds of the draft. As far as the tight end position goes, the sweet spot for me, I think, is going to be right around here, this 5th round pick. So you can see via ADP, a tight end gets taken in like each of these rounds. But when we look at forcing those players to get taken, more so this 5th round spot seems to be where you're going to get that value, get at the back end of a tier. And we'll see, at least in one of my mock drafts, like it's like Dalton Kincaid is right here. I think he's one of the better values if you're aiming to get one of those top 5 type of tight ends. So that's where that lands here. And you can pretty realistic rely on a Trey McBride, Dalton Kincaid, or something to be available here right around this draft a lot of the time. When we look at the wide receiver position in general, I was looking at via the ranking chart, you can attack other positions and let this position fall to you. So I did actually do a mock draft based on that specific line of thought. The wide receivers really, in some mock drafts in some drafts, it definitely might work. I do think this is something to keep in mind at times, like wide receiver early, and then you can kind of just like pluck wide receivers up that fall. But it also depends what you think of wide receivers. It's something you should check out, see how you feel about attacking other positions and just letting like the wide receiver position, once again, fall to you. Do a few mocks like that. I wasn't overly impressed. I was going to show you that, but I ended up actually accidentally closing out of it before I could. But then when we go rounds 5 through 7 here for the wide receiver position, so I want to show you that via ADP, this little area. So you can see it kind of spikes there in round 6 via ADP. via the ranking, just has like one getting taken in each round. This is wide receivers with ADPs between like 60 and 84. If you kind of want to see which group of wide receivers this is, if you can't picture it, this group of wide receivers, it kind of includes like the tail end of a tier. To me, it's like the tail end of a tier, a tier, and then the beginning of like this last tier that I really have some guys that I like. So I'm kind of picky about which receivers that I'm going to like possibly going through these rounds. But if you're not picky, I would say if you're going to, whether it's one or two wide receivers, depends, either plan on taking your wide receiver round 6 and 7, or just 7. And if you're, once again, if you're not picky, if you're saying like, hey, I think, whoever's available around 7 here, most of the time I'm going to be just as happy as whoever I would have taken around 6. Something to think about, plan. But if you are picky too, this is an area, like I said, for me, like you see in an end of a tier and another tier come and go throughout that period. I'm a little bit picky, so I'd rather get rounds 5 and 6 there usually. Wide receivers there, I think, are ones that I do like. And last up, looking at the quarterbacks with these charts, I said that round 7 seems to be a sweet spot for the quarterback. So once again, kind of at the end of a tier via the ranking here. And this ends up being specifically Dak Prescott and Kyler Murray. And this will come up in one of the 10-team drafts in round 8 instead of round 7. Makes sense. It would be a little bit later. So if you don't like Dak Prescott and Kyler Murray, I really think, unless you're comfortable, like me, with some of these guys that you can get later in the draft, but if you want somebody that's worst case scenario, Dak Prescott, Kyler Murray, but you don't like Dak Prescott, Kyler Murray, I do really like this 2-3 turn here. So you can see there, which depending on which one we use, either way, this is an area where oftentimes a quarterback tends to get taken from the front half. Maybe you want to be the team to take that quarterback. Typically, this is how it works out. You're going to either need Josh Allen to fall to you, which I do like when I have a mock draft, you'll see where he falls to the end of the second round there. You could reach at this point for like Hurts or Mahomes a little bit earlier than they would get taken, but once again, if you like those guys a lot and you don't really like the Dak Prescott, Kyler Murray guys, that's I think the way to do it. Now, of course, some of this plenty of overlap in what I just talked about. You can't always do everything all in one draft. Wide receivers, I said rounds 5 through 7. Then I said quarterback round 7, tight end sweet spot round 5. So now it's like wide receiver round 6, and that's also one of the hot spots for a running back round 6. So you get it. Let's get into the fun stuff here, and we'll get rid of that. We'll bring this up. So goodbye me, hello happiness. And we're going to start off with the zigging while the rest of the field zags. So based off of those charts that we were just looking at is how I come to this. It's not a 100%. I'm like still using my hands and looking at the camera. You can't see me. It's not a 100% deal here with the what order I came to, but this is the order I came to. The first 9 rounds specifically, I don't have any like this position or this position. I'll show you how that kind of works out with the flow. But after the first 9 rounds, then I have a quarterback could get taken. In this instance, the first opportunity I had to get a quarterback, Trevor Lawrence is about the end of, and for many it's not even, like this would just be too late for quarterback for your comfort. I would be semi-okay doing this. It just depends how the rest of the draft works. But, we test things, we explore things to find out what we're comfortable with, what we like, what we don't like, and what kind of strengths and weaknesses that creates, and how comfortable we are or are not with those strengths and weaknesses. But in this instance, it was quarterback or wide receiver in both of these. So around this turn, quarterback and wide receiver. So I did take a quarterback and a wide receiver. But if I wanted to take 2 wide receivers there, if I had felt like I needed more wide receivers, which I could, then I could have taken a quarterback or a DST. I ended up going DST there because I already took my quarterback. Same here. It was quarterback or running back. Go running back for Marshawn Lloyd. Then Dontavian Wicks, quarterback, wide receiver. And the final pick, quarterback, DST, kicker. I'm taking kickers in these because some leagues you have to take a kicker. But generally speaking, if you don't have to take a kicker, go take a flyer on a player. And I would recommend taking a flyer, especially the further away from draft, from the first fantasy matchup from week 1 of the NFL season, the further away we are from that, the more I would recommend you take a running back specifically, because they're the most likely to get injured, and you just might land yourself on some gold if you just take a flyer running back there and all of a sudden an injury happens ahead of it. So if you don't have to take a kicker, or if you have to take a kicker, take him. And then if it's not one of those top 2 or 3, just drop them after the draft. Go pick up, once again, I would say a running back. So we'll also be looking at more so once we get to the 10-team stuff. So I think this is all valid, whether you're in a 10-team or 12-team league. Some of the observations that I'll be talking about, and I'll be talking about players and whatnot throughout, is that is it worth taking a running back in the first round, or is it worth taking a wide receiver? Generally, my advice is to go wide receiver. I'm talking about like the first 5-6 picks, half-ish of the first round, because it takes so long before you get your second pick. You might miss out on a tier or two at positions that you would love to be able to pick from, depending on what you think of players. But it's so long till you get your second player that player is so important. I think it's a little bit more team building wise, safer, and in that sense more smart and strategic to take a wide receiver, because they're less likely to get injured and their injuries are less likely to hold them out for more time than running backs. It kind of feels like Christian McCaffrey might have that year where he gets injured. Hopefully not. Running backs are more susceptible. It's more risky to take a running back, but it also gives you, like, Christian McCaffrey is amazing. He gives you such a security blanket at that RB1, such a big advantage versus like any running back. It's insane. So I get it either way, but my general advice, I lean wide receiver. However, because of how this draft goes, I might say differently. Let's go on to the second pick here, wide receiver, tight end, Kelsey. Typically, so for me, like, I wouldn't want Kelsey here, but I would have taken Sam Laporta here. But I was following strictly the zigzag method here. Sam Laporta, often enough, will make it to this turn where you could get him. So Sam Laporta and Chris Olave. In this instance, I probably would have rather taken a different position, like wide receiver, Nico Collins or something there. Then, though, we get Tank Dell, T. Higgins. And so for me, this works for either 2 wide receiver or 3 wide receiver. Obviously, for 2 wide receiver, this would be fine. 3 wide receiver, we do end up getting DeAndre Hopkins there a couple rounds later, round 8. When I look at the running backs, I'm not, like, I would have taken somebody over Najee Harris. And then pairing up Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren is interesting. It's either 2 times the headache, or it's guaranteeing something out of that Pittsburgh running game, which should be good. Even last year, I mean, they split, and both of them were decent. But if one of them emerges as the favorite here, it could be quite valuable. So that's the good thing. The headache is just if they're kind of what they were last year, which it's not the worst headache in the world, but it's not. Yeah, I'd rather avoid it, I suppose, in a lot of ways. Other than that, Khalil Shakir, Dontavian Wicks, I think a couple of nice picks, especially in a 3 wide receiver league here for depth. Marshawn Lloyd, I like that for depth at the running back. Not my favorite running back room there. So let's look at what happens if we go with the flow. We're picking from the second spot now. So, taking Christian McCaffrey, lot less likely, still could happen here. But if we're taking the typical players that are taken here in the top 4 picks, we're looking at wide receiver. Second round could be a wide receiver or a running back, player's choice. I went with wide receiver here, so open up with CeeDee Lamb, Chris Olave. I think that's a fantastic open, so I like that a lot. Then in the third round, we could quarterback. We saw does get taken sometimes, so quarterback, wide receiver, or running back. It was another player's choice. I ended up deciding to go running back there. Followed that up with another running back in Joe Mixon. So solid start here. No problems with this. Dalton Kincaid, here it is in the 5th round. Talked about that sweet spot with Dalton Kincaid. See Mark Andrews, Trey McBride also going around there. So if you can get one of them right in here in the 5th round, that's you're getting, I think, a better value than going ahead and taking a Travis Kelce, who I think, might end up being the worst of this bunch. Still like a top 5, top 6 guy, but just at the bottom of it, where some of these guys might surpass him this year. I think it's possible. In this instance, though, going with the flow, wide receiver Jaden Reed there. Don't love that little grouping of wide receivers. This is where I would rather be taking something else. But going with the flow, that's what I was supposed to take. So go with the flow, take a wide receiver, and then quarterback in the next one. Dak Prescott, followed by running back. Get Zach Moss there, which, more recently than doing this, some good Chase Brown news comes out. But I got him too. So I'm guaranteeing that backfield at least, which should be a good backfield to have. And I think it'll end up being Chase Brown. But either way, if there's an injury or anything, like that's a solid little duel to have at that point in the draft. That's fine. Running back, wide receiver depth, once again, wasn't crazy about Jaden Reed being my wide receiver 3 or my, another issue here is my flex, especially in a 3 wide receiver league. But Troy Franklin, Jackson Smith, Dontavian Wicks looks less exciting now just because of what's in front of him. But not to say there isn't potential all across the board there. And like Troy Franklin, there's other people I think on my list. It was just the highest in ADP that I would have preferred. In this instance, I took 2 tight ends. Not something I typically do, but I just want to show you some different iterations. I know a lot of people like 2 tight ends, so that's a strong little tight end there because I guess I had a quarterback tight end or running back option there, and I guess I felt good on the running back room waiting there. So that's just how that works. Out of these 2, at the end of the day, I actually still feel more comfortable with that zigzag group than with the flow. Let me know which one you like the most. But that's going to bring us on to going hero RB, and you wouldn't believe it. Christian McCaffrey made it here the time that I'm planning on going hero RB, and he makes it. I actually kind of wish it didn't work out like that, but this is also to show you if he does make it there for your 3rd pick, maybe you want to click it into your mind like, okay, I think I'm going to go hero RB if I can pull that off. Like, this is my opportunity to go hero RB because look at those wide receivers that we get after that. Just fantastic. We're not going zigzag. We're not going with the flow. This is more freestyle pick in here. We've gotten an idea from the zigging and the zagging and going with the flow too of how the drafts work out. So I really like getting a lot of wide receivers in those first 5 rounds. This works perfectly for me. Obviously, 3 wide receiver league, I'm ecstatic. I'm still good with 2 wide receiver league because now I have fantastic depth. And if you know anything about what I think of this draft, I do like a lot of late round running backs, and specifically in this hero RB one, like I get my Zamir White, my Chase Brown, their lower 11th round, who I think both could go much higher. I have them both thinking that they're going to be, I currently have Chase Brown ranked as a low-end RB2, but still an RB2. I think he has potential to be a high-end RB2, and I have Zamir White ranked as a high-end RB2, who I think more likely has the opposite potential to be a lower-end RB2, but I still think both of them should finish in that territory. So, I have a lot of confidence in both of them, assuming Chase Brown's going to be the RB1 for Cincinnati, but that's currently what it looks like is going to happen. Other thing I like about this roster here, the Evan Ingram, Jaden Daniels, Trevor Lawrence deal is one of my primary plans to pull off on draft day. In this instance, Jalen Warren there, I would rather have Austin Eckler. I just went with the number 1 via ADP option there, I believe. Ray Davis, a little extra depth. Technically I am thin at the running back position. I feel comfortable, I like it. Still only 3 deep, so of course we get another running back late. And I will, just a plug here for Joshua Palmer. If you do something like this, you go heavy wide receiver early, and you just need 1 extra wide receiver on your roster. I really like Josh Palmer as that break in case of emergency guy. I think he's going to have a high floor. I don't think he's going to have a high ceiling. At least keep you in the match against your opponent. That's going to bring us on to a 0 RB strategy here. Picking from pick 4, we were picking from pick 3 with the hero RB, of course. McCaffrey, probably went 1 in this. Didn't make it to us, so that's okay. We get CeeDee Lamb. He's my number 1 guy in the draft, or at least wide receiver for sure. Between him and McCaffrey, it's a toss-up. So happy to have him here at pick 4. Then we go Travis Kelce. So I was, I think, probably trying, in this draft, I wanted to, once again, show you something different, show you what it could look like if you go a different route here. So, even hero running back, you could do this with the tight end and the quarterback. So in this instance, we know that I feel pretty comfortable with later round running backs. We are going 0 RB anyways. So I wanted to see how does it fill out, how does the wide receiver room work out if we go tight end and quarterback here in the first 5 picks as well as our wide receivers. And so by taking both of them, I do think, although, of course, you could fill up your top 3 wide receivers in a 3 wide receiver league with Kupp, Ayuk, Lamb, and quite possibly have like the best trio. But you also are thin, probably. So I don't love that about the strategy. I would probably rather, if I'm in a 3 wide receiver league, forego Travis Kelce here and get a wide receiver. You can see, my secret weapon, Chris Olave, went 1 pick before that, so that's probably part of that decision. But then we get Anthony Richardson here. I love that. Travis Kelce, you might love that, so that's perfectly fine. Good trio of wide receivers. I like this method if you're going 2 wide receiver, and I like hero RB, and more so avoiding going with quarterback or tight end if you're in a 3 wide receiver league, or at least just going with one of them. After we get this start for the first 5 rounds, then we go DeAndre Swift, Ramondre Stevenson. We just, start plugging away at these running backs, but we did take a little break there for Ladd McConkey before going back to just drilling down these running backs. So you look at it, Swift, Stevenson, Singletary, I think Chase Brown. We still get 4 starting running backs for their teams, even 3 this late in the draft. I don't know, but because the wide receivers are pushing them back, we're fine. We have guys who are going to be our starters this late in the draft, so that's fantastic. I have no problem with this. Yeah, they're not this isn't the strongest running back room, but I think we can handle it given the fact that we should have such a big advantage at tight end and at quarterback. I don't know if you do at tight end here. That's a little bit of, one of my concerns by taking that tight end instead of maybe getting like a Mark Andrews and going Chris Olave there if he would have been there. Just switching, that value up a little bit. But hey, Cooper Kupp could outperform Olave anyways, so who knows. Other than that, Zach Charbonnet, Tyrone Tracy running back there in the last round. So we take 6 running backs still because we got a bunch of RB2s. I don't know that we have a whole lot of faith in any of these guys becoming RB1s. So like Tyrone Tracy, I think has more upside. He also is a handcuff to Singletary, so that's nice. But I also think that he could end up starting over Singletary. And apparently he is starting off his career with good news coming out of camp. So that's good for him because he is a guy who's like a project who could either do nothing this year or could do a lot because of the high upside for him. And the team clearly drafted him with a plan. And he's a receiving guy. So once again, too, full PPR, he's more valuable for that. Just somebody to keep in mind for this. If you're going to take not taking a kicker or whatever, he's often available there, the last picks of the draft. Let's go ahead and look at some 10-team league drafts now. And going into this draft that you can see on the screen already, first pick there, I know that from some experience on Thursdays doing some drafts with people that I feel comfortable in a 10-team league with the wide receiver position throughout the entirety of the draft, or at least I thought that I knew that. So I figured I would attack the running back position with some gusto to begin with, and then about halfway through the draft, I was thinking that I might have liked going with Sam Laporta with my 3rd pick over a running back or like Olave and Ayuk there, whichever one of them you prefer around that turn. So going with once again, Sam Laporta around that turn instead of one of those, ETN or Chris Olave like I did. Running back, wide receiver, running back, Pittman, Metcalf, so 2 or 3 wide receiver league. 3 wide receiver league, I'm feeling pretty thin at wide receiver with how this draft works out. Maybe could have fixed that a little bit with taking somebody else instead of Jordan Love and just settling with the quarterback, but then we're, trusting Trevor Lawrence. I don't know how comfortable you feel with that or not. Jane Daniels didn't quite make it to us. But yeah, 2 wide receiver league, really feel comfortable with this. And 3 wide receiver league, the positive thing here with how this works out is, James Conner can be our flex. David Montgomery could be our flex. Tony Pollard could be our flex. Our flex spot, we should never have to rely on a wide receiver to play there. We might start off, talking 3 wide receiver league. 2 wide receiver league, we'd probably start off with Metcalf there, obviously. But 3 wide receiver league, we're just hoping for health, and we'll keep our eye open for, we're hoping that Jackson Smith and Jigba ends up being very good. Jacoby Myers, hopefully that quarterback situation maybe stabilizes, and then Jacoby Myers is solid, possible. But also somebody will feel free to cut after week 1 if somebody goes off that we weren't expecting on the free agency. So we'll be looking for wide receivers, but our running backs, we should be nice and deep here. I like that. I don't think we lose too much at quarterback. I think we can make it work between Love and Lawrence there. Usually don't see me take Love, but because of how this draft worked out, that's just what I did. And then, yeah, that's it. You know, we got ahead of the train a little bit there at DST before we taken our final wide receiver, just because that's how we did it. But Romeo Doubs there, getting really good reporting out of camp. Might be moving him up the draft charts a little bit. So there you can see him. Team 3 took him just a couple picks after I took the 49ers. Something to keep in mind there. Really good. I can just tell you right now, it's a little gem if you're watching. Jair Alexander, number 1 cornerback in Green Bay, a really good, talented guy. If he talks, if he talks you up, like, you listen. You listen when Jair talks, and he's talking Romeo Doubs up a lot lately in training camp. So, just like we did with the other videos last week, now I'm going to go a little bit based off of some of the lessons I learned. My plan here was to go running back, quarterback, DST, kicker for the final 6 picks, just because I thought I would like that. We do end up going, running back, a quarterback, DST, kicker. No, running back, quarterback, DST, kicker. Yeah, instead of 2 quarterbacks, we got like 3 running backs here because we ended up going quarterback early. So this is one of those things where I stayed water. Always, no matter how set of a plan you come into a draft with, be prepared to change it up. So in this instance, Chris Olave's gone, who I like a lot, but Josh Allen falls. So I got Christian McCaffrey, Josh Allen, Sam Laporta. The plan here was to get Sam Laporta, but the surprise here is Josh Allen. So I wanted to find out, what does this look like? And I got to say, I would feel quite comfortable with this. Then we get Pittman, DK Metcalf again at wide receiver there. So comfortable with that. I mean, at the end of the day, could Pittman or Metcalf outperform Chris Olave? Sure, even though I'm a big believer and lover in Chris Olave. So strong there. And then I do like this wide receiver room overall better. We got Amari Cooper, Roma Dunze, who's like a 50-50 shot, I'd say, at working out or not. And Hollywood Brown, who I think has a chance of being really, really good. Everything that we were like hoping Xavier Worthy could be Hollywood Brown. So I do like this wide receiver room a little bit better. And I'm not missing out for my running backs. I feel comfortable doing this. I feel comfortable with Zamir White as my RB2. I feel comfortable with Chase Brown as my RB2 currently. And Tyjae Spears is, I don't know what to expect from that. I really don't. That's kind of a wild card there. But taking another wild card too at the end of the draft, because we are thinner at running back here. But 2 wide receiver, 3 wide receiver league. Either way, I think that this worked out, taking Josh Allen because he fell, and then Sam Laporta there around the turn. So I like this a little bit more than that first draft that I did, but they have different strengths and weaknesses, so I could see it either way. And in both instances, took 2 quarterbacks. I know a lot of people like to take 2 quarterbacks. Let's look at from pick 3. I think I was going to go into a little more depth, but this is running along. So pick 3, wanted to start off wide receiver, of course. So wide receiver, Lamb, London. You can pause these and look at like what I'm, giving up on other options around those areas. And then Achane around the turn there. And then coming around, so this is interesting around this 4-5 pick. This is when pay attention to your board because it can make decisions for you. I ended up taking Lamar Jackson because I was listening to the board. Because for me, Cooper Kupp, Jalen Waddle, Devonta Smith, Mike Pittman, DK Metcalf, I'm happy with any of them at the next pick. And I'm just as happy with James Cook too. So there's more wide receivers and running backs than I need that I have all like in the same tier that for sure will make it to my next pick because there's only 4 picks there and there's like 7 guys that I just listed. So if I kind of want Lamar Jackson around one of these picks, I might as well take him first. So that's what I do. And then wide receiver, and then Aaron Jones for my RB2, Christian Kirk here. So 2 or 3 wide receiver, this works. This is how, when we just go with 1 quarterback or 1 tight end, I think that works better for 3 wide receiver leagues instead of going all in on getting a quarterback and a tight end early in the draft. And then Zamir White, Mostert, Benson, I feel comfortable with this running back room. Tight end, end up taking 2 of them because I don't know how much faith I have in Bowers, but Jake Ferguson is a guy who I actually have a lot of faith in. He's kind of my plan 3, might even be just my plan 2 because I can get him even later than Evan Ingram. So we'll see, but I have a lot of faith in him. He's in a really good situation to have a really good fantasy year, and there's not a whole lot in the way of that outside of, injuries, which can always happen to anybody. So there's this draft. So I ended up taking Luke Musgrave late. There's some other options I might rather take too with higher upside, just in case the Brock Bowers thing doesn't work out there. But as always, we're going to go to the version 2.0 here, picking from the same spot. And here is where I've been teasing this. I really wanted to see running back over wide receivers who I have ranked higher because of how I like how this draft falls, or how this draft falls and how I think it works for me. So in this instance, I was like, okay, first of all, Bijan Robinson, not the best news from the offensive coordinator in terms of his usage for drafting him this high. So maybe Breece Hall would have been the guy here that we might end up saying instead. But what I wanted to see is if I take one of these running backs who I do have in my overall rankings lower than CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase, Tyreek Hill, of course, Christian McCaffrey, and I draft them for, for roster build reasons. Once I'm done with the whole thing, am I going to prefer what I see if I draft one of these running backs in the first round? I really like this roster. So Bijan Robinson there instead of, I would say CeeDee Lamb's the guy who I have in my rankings. And then I followed that up with Kyren Williams. I do have some concerns there, but also he was like the RB2 last year. The main thing, if I'm drafting Kyren Williams, is that I'm going to put a little asterisk / highlight, whatever, circle Blake Corum to ensure that I even reach for him a little bit later, to ensure that I get Blake Corum. In that instance, I feel pretty comfortable. Like the Los Angeles Rams running back should be valuable. Very often, they don't use two running backs, so I like that if that's going to continue to be the case. And in case of injury, now I do have, the backup there anyways. So I think that's a good situation there. That's just my thoughts. So I ended up making that happen. You can see in the 11th round. Follow these first two picks up with, now we go heavy on wide receiver. And I've talked about this, and it's all the more easier to do in a 10-team league here. Is wide receivers up till that 6th round, like there's some good options. You see Amari Cooper goes a little bit before, but George Pickens still available, Keenan Allen, Christian Kirk, McLaurin there, depending on who you like there in the 6th round, like out of that group, including T. Higgins. Love those guys. Olave, DJ Moore, Pittman, Higgins, 2 or 3 wide receiver. Feeling good and comfortable with that. Then we come back around. We get James Conner as our RB3. Like, fantastic. He should be good when he's healthy. The only concern is that he's not going to make it through the entire season. He really never does. So this was another instance where I highlighted Trey Benson, and I should have been able to get him. I took a risk, and I don't think it was a wise risk, but that's why we practice, right? So now, around the next turn, I told you about the Dak Prescott, Kyler Murray thing. So this one was fun because I know I needed a quarterback and a tight end, and I kind of got too hyper-focused on that. But the decision was, do I like Dak Prescott or Evan Ingram and Dak Prescott? Probably. Or do I like Kyler Murray and Jake Ferguson? Probably, because we know Josh Allen, Team 1, already has a quarterback. But we know that Team 2 is probably going to be taking one of those 2 quarterbacks because that's just the time of the draft that it is. So, and then tight end, we know that Team 2 has a tight end. Team 1 did not have a tight end yet. So we also know that there's a high risk that Evan Ingram and or Jake Ferguson are going to be going. So I went with Kyler Murray, Jake Ferguson. Now, I did not really need to be too concerned about Jake Ferguson. I mean, just go back one. Jake Ferguson goes early in the 11th round. This is early in the 9th round. I could have just held off and gotten Trey Benson right there, secure that, have Trey Benson and James Conner, lock up that Arizona backfield. Another one that's good to have, just like the Los Angeles Rams backfield, which you will see in a couple of rounds, I locked up. Now, the only thing that's fine with this is I do have Austin Eckler ranked higher than Trey Benson. So I did technically get a better running back according to my rankings anyways. Not the end of the world. It's fine. But I would change that up. And then Romeo Doubs late there as my backup to those other wide receivers. Feel great about that. Ended up going with the second quarterback there. So there you go. There are some opinions, some thoughts on things. I hope that this just helped you and gave you some ideas of what you could tool around with, play with, some little tips and tricks of the trait. And you take care. Let me know what you think, especially like, which one of these. Which one of these did you like best? I think my vote probably goes for the Hero RB roster. I'd be happy to whip that out on game day and see how that roster ends up working out throughout the year. All right, that's it. Peace out. Love you.